Hello guys, how are you? I hope you're doing well. I need to confess you that this is my third attempt to record this class. I noticed that in the previous two attempts, I was just talking of other different topics that they are not really related with what we have to cover today. So I'm going to try to keep myself focused, and I'm going to try to keep this as short as I can. We are close to the end of the semester. And with that, I need to thank you for everything that you have done in this class, for your effort, for your patience with me. Also to thank you for your commitment. It has been very interesting to read your papers. Also, I need to apologize because I know that I haven't provided you with a grade in a couple of your assignments. It's just that I'm extremely busy. It seems that the hours of the day are not enough for all the things that I have to do. So I apologize for that, but be sure that you will receive a grade. Don't worry about that, okay? And I hope that I will be doing that during this week, okay? Now, having said that, I sent to you an email because this is the week of the student feedback. So I sent to you an email with information on how to complete your SFI for this class, which will be very, very appreciated and helpful for me. Because with your student feedback, with your SFIs, I can be able to identify what am I doing right, so I can keep doing that, and also what are my areas of opportunity. So I want to encourage you to go and complete that, to think that this is not only about your experience in the class, but this is also about how can I keep doing my work, and how can I keep doing my work, and how can I improve my work? Okay, so yeah, I hope that you are having a positive experience so far, and that those SFIs can reflect that. But also, I hope that you can tell me what are the areas that I can improve my teaching. Okay, all right. So now, having said that, today we are in week number 7, and we have to cover the topic of family and parenting. Two very important topics. We all come from a family, even those who grew up in a foster care system, they also come from a family, right? Or those who come from a single father or single mother, they also have a family. I mean, we all have our roots in our families. Even though they were present or not, there was a positive or negative experience. And because of that, it's very important to understand what's happening with the family, and what are the impact of marriage, divorce, single life, and so on. And on the other hand, many of you are or will become parents. Many of you will work with parents as well. And parenting is so important element, not only in the process of emotional, psychological development for the children, but so important element for the personal growth experience. As a father of 3 here and 2 over there, I have my wife, she was pregnant with 5, we lose 2, we have 2 miscarriages, and 3 kids that they are alive. One of them is 12 years old. The other one is 9 years old, almost 10. And the other one is 7 years old. And it has been a wonderful experience. But I know that my parenting is related with my psychological and emotional experience, and with the sense of personal growth or not. When I'm having a good relationship with my children, that helps me a lot to feel satisfied, to feel that I'm growing as a person. But when I am having a difficult, challenging moment with my kids, I'm not going to say that that's not helpful, but because it is. I just remembered that a couple of weeks ago, I had I was having a bad day, difficulties, a lot of things here in my work, and having to deal with many other things outside of my job and so on. I was not tolerant. And for some reason, one of my children, he came to me, and I was not a very nice dad that day with him. And I remember going to bed with this feeling of regret, with this feeling of, and the idea of, this is not the type of father that I want to be for my kids, right? So I went to his bed, and very sorry for him, because I went and I hugged him and I kissed him, and but he was sleeping, so I guess that I woke him up, and he was like, "What's going on, Dad?" And I said, "I just want to tell you that I love you, buddy, that I'm sorry for today, and tomorrow we're going to talk more about this, but be sure that I'm proud of you." So why am I telling you this? Because even in those challenging or difficult moments, I see the opportunity in how that can help me to grow as a parent, but also to grow as a person, right? So again, family and parenting, two very important elements of the personal growth experience, which is the one that we are talking in this class today, or in this course, in this semester. So with that said, that's enough of this introduction. Let's go with the presentation so you can see what I have prepared for you. All right, so you have, and I hope you like it. This is the first time that I'm teaching this course, and because of that, I am preparing every class from scratches, and yeah, so there you go. So I hope that you are liking the content, the presentations, and so on. It's always interesting, the experience of presenting for the first time a class, because when you are teaching, then there are things that you're like, maybe that was not necessarily, maybe I can avoid that in the next semester or something like that. But yeah, but we will see. I hope that so far so good for all of you. So family and parenting. There you have that picture of that family, which I don't know, why did I choose that picture? I see the parents with their three girls smiling, having an experience of joy. And I think that the reason of why I choose this picture is because we are having a very negative message out there from the media, from the social media, and even from some academics and politicians talking in negative terms about family. In the past, there was like this consensus that family was the nucleus, that was the core element of our society. And because of that, there was a sense of, what's the word that I'm looking? There was a sense of, or an agreement that for having a healthy society, it was important to have healthy families. But now, I would say from the last 15 years, perhaps even more, the narrative has gone in a different direction. The narrative has gone in the direction of what is most important is that the individual can develop their goals in life, that the individual can achieve their pursuits in life, that the individual has material things, has education, because now it's not the family, but the individual, the nucleus of the society. So we are paying too much attention to have individuals, that they have their material, their healthy, their academic, their work needs covered. And we are not talking as much about family, right? And this shift in the conversation, this shift in the narrative, I think that has to do with the humanistic theory. Remember when we talk about the humanistic theory, that they were basically telling us, as long as the individual has all their material, academic needs covered, that individual will develop healthy, will develop appropriately. Well, we have been trying that for many years, and seems that it's not necessarily the case. So, for example, here in the United States, we have a wealthy society. I was talking with another professor, and we were talking about how poverty looks very different here in the United States than in the rest of the world. How poverty here looks like having a home with air conditioning, with 1 or 2 cars, with 2 or 3 TVs, with internet, with cellular phones. And we were saying, like, that's not how poverty looks everywhere else in the world. That's how upper middle class looks in pretty much the rest of the world. But here in the United States, starvation, it's pretty much non-existent. Lack of power, lack of housing, lack of basic needs. It's minimal in comparison with other countries, right? And education levels are very high. Income is very high in comparison with other places. So, for example, here, the minimum wage, it's, if I remember well, here in Illinois, it's around $12 the hour, something like that. Well, for you to have an idea, in Mexico, it's 180 pesos per day, which means something like $8 per day, not per hour. So you can see those contrasts, right? Those differences. So United States have been pushing in the humanistic direction of having all these external benefits, all these academic, social, health needs covered. And even though United States is the country with the highest number of people with mental health disorders, it's one of the countries with more divorce around the world. It's one of the countries with the highest rates of suicide. So it's evidently that is not bringing everything that we need. It's evidently that we need something else, and not only material goods, academic good, health good, and so on. And I think that something that is crucial, a fundamental element of that, is having strong, stable families. Let's talk about that. Let's see, why am I saying that, okay? Well, these are the 3 topics that we're going to cover: marriage, divorce, cohabitation, and single adults, relationship matters, and parenting styles. Now, before I start, I want to say that I understand that these are very sensible topics. Perhaps some of you come from a divorced family or from a single parent family, or perhaps you already, because I know that some of you, this is the adult program, right? So some of you might have already experienced divorce, or perhaps some of you are a single parent. I want to tell you, I hope that I'm able to share the information that I'm going to share here in a non-judgmental way, in a loving, charitable way, but also in an objective way. In my family, we have experienced these topics. I come from a family that my parents, they are still together. They have been together for 51 years. It's amazing, right? But one of my sisters, she experienced divorce a few years ago. My wife, she comes from a divorced family. And I have seen in firsthand many of the things that we're going to talk today. And because of that, I want to be respectful for every reality, okay, that you are experiencing. So please don't take any of my comments as with a personal element. Of course, I don't know your family realities, right? Also, don't interpret any of the information from a perspective of prejudice. We're going to try to talk about what the data is telling us, what the science is telling us. Also, what is the Christian perspective on these topics, and what can we do with that? Now, yeah, okay, so with that said, let me continue with the conversation and see how I'm able to do it. But I want to apologize in advance if I'm not completely able to present this in the most loving, charitable, but also truthful way, okay? I'm gonna try to do my best. All right. So let's talk about the Christian perspective first, about marriage, divorce, cohabitation, and single adults. And I brought to you this passage from the Bible, Genesis number 2, 18:25. And it's a beautiful passage. It's the passage of the creation of Eve. And I think that has a lot of wisdom, a lot of content that we can think about it. And the image that I brought to you, I think that it's a fantastic, beautiful image. It's an Orthodox, Christian Orthodox icon. And you can see that God, it's represented in the figure of the Son, in the person of the Son, Jesus Christ. You see, ICXC, which is the signs of Christ. And then you have Adam and Eve, and it's the creation of Eve. Okay, so let's read the passage of the Bible first. And the Lord God said, "It is not good. It is not good for the man to be alone. I wish to make another creature who will be like him." So just with that single paragraph, right, we have explosion of theological, philosophical, moral, psychological elements. It's not good for the man to be alone. We have talked in different classes how loneliness is poisonous, how loneliness can brings shorter life expectations, higher levels of medical health problems, including mental health problems, we will talk about that more today, about lack of satisfaction in life and many other problems, such as financial problems, and many other things. So we know men and women, if they are alone, life is going to be more difficult, and they will experience more challenges in life. Then I wish to make another creature who will be like him. So when I hear about the tension between sexes, that sometimes politicians, they like to amplify that tension to bring votes to their campaigns and things like that, I'm thinking, we are different. We have a different body. We have different genetics. We have different chromosomes. We have different ways that we experience life, different ways that we experience paternity, different ways that we experience emotions, but we are also complementary. So what makes us different doesn't make us less or more than the other sex. But what makes us is the possibility to complement the experience of life, to understand the experience of life from the other perspective as well. In that regard, we have the same dignity. We have the same value. We have been created, both sexes, in the image and likeness of God. with different attributes, with different characteristics, but neither better or worse, but complementary. See? And the passage will continue in that direction. The Lord God therefore formed every sort of wild animal and all the birds of the air, and he brought them before the man to see what he will name them. Whatever the man called each living creature, that was the name that it would bear. The man gave names to every type of animal, all the birds of the air and all the wild animals, but the man could not find anything that was like him. All the creation, all the beauties of the creation were not enough because they were not like him. Because there was no possibility of what I was telling you, right? This complementary, this complementary life, the possibility to experience life from the perspective of someone else that is like me, but at the same time, it's different than me. And because it's like me and it's different than me, it's complementary, enriches my life. No animal can do that. Sometimes when I see those stickers, bumper stickers in the cars that says like, dog's mom, dog's family, I'm like, that's a sign that we are going in the wrong direction. You are not a dog mom. You're a human being. They are dogs, animals, which I love them. I have always had dogs, but you are not a dog mom. They are not your family. They can belong to your family. They can belong to you, but they are not your family because they are not humans, right? But that says, and as you know, many people are saying that I don't want to have children because they are very expensive. I rather have dogs. Well, that says something about our brokenness. That says something about how we are losing that capacity to see the dignity and this likeness that we have been created, the likeness of God, right? And it says something about how we are losing the meaning of our own existence and the necessity to continue with that existence. And we can go to even to a more extreme position where people are saying like humans are like a disease for the earth. Therefore, we should get rid of humans. And I'm like, well, wait, what? What's the point there? Right? So anyway, the Lord God therefore caused the man to fall into a deep sleep. He took one of his ribs and replaced it with flesh. The Lord God then formed a woman out of the rib that he had taken from the man. He brought her before the man. So, two things here. One, he placed man in this deep sleep, which is very interesting. Why? God didn't need to do that. Actually, in the other narrative or the other tale of the creation, it says that he created man and women, or man and woman at the same time, right? So he didn't need to do that, but he decided to do that in a deep sleep, which is telling us about something very important. The relationship between men and women, between the two sexes, is much more deep, complex, profound than what we can see in the conscious level. It's something that is so deep, so profound, that we will not have purpose, meaning, without the relationship with the other sex. That the two sexes are rooted in a common ground, which is God, and they both come from the same place. Not only that, they also are the same thing. So the Jewish, they have a tradition saying that before this moment, before the creation of Eve, in reality, what happened is that Adam was a being having the two elements, the female and the male element. And what happened with the creation of Eve is the separation of the female element. And because of that, the attraction of the sexes will be constant to try to come to that original place. Again, that complementary, to try to be one again. In psychology, we even talk about the psychological androgen experience. And that we see that men and women, when they grow up, when they grow older, they start integrating elements from the female and male perspective in ways that can enrich their personality, enrich their experience of life. So that's one very important element. God placed Adam to sleep, in a deep sleep, because the Bible is telling us there's something that is not in the surface level. There's something here that it's so profound and so deep that we need to be appreciative of that. Then the second thing, right? He took one of his ribs and replaced it with flesh. The Lord God then formed a woman out of the rib that he had taken from the man. He brought her before the man. So a rib, it's very interesting, a rib. Why a rib? Why not a finger? Why not a toe? Why not the knees? Why a rib? Because it's talking about equality. It's talking about equality of dignity, okay? Because again, we just said, men and women are different, but complementary. But they are equal in dignity. And because they are equal in dignity, God is telling us in this passage of the Bible, I choose the rib because that way I can bring this new creation the same level of the previous creation, which was Adam, right? So they too will share this nature, this human nature, this spiritual nature with the equality of dignity. Then the men say, this one is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman because she was taken from a man. Right? Adam is recognizing this one is just like me. This woman is just like me. And because of that, we need to share the name, man, woman. We have the same structure, spiritual, molecular, biological structure, even though we are different. This is why a man leaves his father and his mother and joins with a wife, and the two become one flesh. Remember what I was telling you about the Jewish tradition, right? Men and women are separate, and then they have to reunite to become one flesh. That's why even the design of our body is so amazing. We are created for complementation. We are created for communion. We are created for this deep unitive relationship. I apologize for being kind of explicit here, but if you see the design of the sexual organs, right? The genitalia, the penis and the vagina, they are designed to bring us together and to become one flesh. Now, the man and the woman were naked, but they did not feel any shame because they were sharing this deep relationship, this deep understanding, because they were in a state of original purity. There was no original sin yet, right? And because of that, they were able to see the other as he or she is. Now, this is beautiful because this is what happened with relationships. when we have been in a long-term relationship where there's love, communion, unity, there's a deep connection and not just a surface level. When we have become one flesh, we are even able to anticipate the answers of our couple. We are able to understand our couple. We are even able to know what the other person is thinking. Not that we can read their mind, but we know that person so well that we are able to recognize all those things. We can be naked and feeling no shame. So it's, on one hand, yes, it's the naked body that we are not appreciating anymore how important is that nakedness, that and the protection of that nakedness, right? In a society that we have so much promiscuity and that we have so much pornography, so it's a porn-oriented society, right? We are not identifying that nakedness is more than the physical excitement, the physical attraction, is the sacredness of the creation, right? Which needs to be shared in an intimate, profound relationship to keep the level of sacredness and importance that naked body has. But it's also about this nakedness of the soul, that the other person can know me. And relationships are able to have long-term, like to be successful across the time, not only because the amount of years that they have, but the level of satisfaction when we are able to show ourselves as we are and not to show ourselves as we don't want them to know how we are. That's why one of the things that I say to my students and also to the patients that they visit me in my practice is, before you get married, you need to ask difficult questions. You need to ask that person about their development. How was your childhood? How was your adolescence? What things hurt you? What things edify you? What things were important for you? Show me your dark side, right? Show me your shadow. Show me your bright side as well. Show me what's painful and show me what is making you grow, so I can know you, so I can understand who you are, so I can see your naked soul. And of course, we will never be able to know that person 100%. Not even when we have been married with that person for 50 years, as my parents are now married, because there's going to always be that intimate, secret place in our mind where it's us talking with us, right? But the more that we ask, the more that we have conversations, the better we know that person. And the better we can know if there's this communion or not that can help us to have successful marriages. Now, so that's the Genesis, right? The Old Testament. Now in the New Testament, Jesus is giving us a teaching based on that. He's telling us, haven't you read, he replied, that at the beginning, the Creator made them male and female, and said, for this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate. There are many things here as well, right? I always say to my students, you were created since the moment of the conception, the moment that your dad sperm and your mom egg get together and they conform the zygote, that single cell that has all your DNA, all your chromosomes, that says if you're going to be a female or a male, a man or a woman, everything. And even before that moment, you were created by a divine thought. God was thinking about you. And he was thinking about you in the best of the possible ways. He thought about me as a Mexican. He thought about me with my qualities, with my limitations. He thought about me with my body, with my sex, my with my personality. He thought about me with my genetic information. He thought about me in the way that he wants to think about me, the way that he wants to create me. He didn't think about me as a Russian or as a Chinese or as an American. He thought about me as a Mexican who grew up in that environment. And I'm saying about this ethnicities or nationality, not because he's thinking in terms of Mexican, American, or Russian, but because he's thinking, I want Mario to be born in that place, in that time of history, with that family, with those professors, with those friends, because I will bring something good out of it. And same thing about you and about you and you and you and you and all of us. He thought about us in this time of history, in this pandemic, in these conditions, in this geographical era, with this technology, with all this, because he wants to bring something good out of this through you. That's number one. Then number two, Jesus is again bringing this idea that they are no longer two, but one flesh. And I think that's the key element of successful marriages, that we are able to stop thinking about ourselves and we start thinking about ourselves. Stop thinking about me, I, and start thinking about us. Not as individuals, but as a couple, not as a two, but as a one. And when we are able to think about that, when we're able to think, what am I going to do is going to help my couple or not? What am I going to do is going to enrich my couple or not? It's going to hurt my couple or not? It's going to be for the good of my couple or not? Then things make a whole difference. If you are dealing with pornography, if I watch this porn film, it's going to be good for my couple or not? It's going to make my couple better or not? It's going to edify my couple or not? I think that the answer is obvious, right? If you are having a selfish interest on how to spend your money and you ask, if I spend my money in this way, it's going to be for the good of my couple or not? Is this going to bring growth and happiness for my couple or not? When you are thinking about your own development, but not the development of the other person, and you ask those questions too, I think that is really important. Stop seeing as individual, but now start seeing ourselves as a couple. That whatever I do, it's to be oriented not only for my own personal good, but also for the personal good of my couple, my spouse. And then it says, therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate. And that is a very challenging reality. Look, 50% of marriages are going to end up in divorce in this country. And for those who married in those who are having the second marriages, the numbers, they go up to 60%. And if it's the third marriage, the numbers go up to 65%. So it's evidently that we are doing something wrong. It's evidently that we are not following that teaching, that Jesus teaching of being together forever. And why is this happening? Why is that we are seeing these numbers? And you can see this chart that I think is very interesting. On the blue one is the number per 1,000 people getting married. And the yellow one is the number per 1,000 people getting divorced. You can see there's like a similar trend, right? It seems that they are getting married at the same time and divorced at the same time. The trend are similar. And even though I said that 50% of marriages are ending in divorce, it's also true that that trend it's going down, thankfully. But there are many things that we need to consider there. Also, divorce is going down, but also there are many things that we need to consider there. One of those things is cohabitation. More and more people are cohabitating now, and because of that, there's a decline both in divorce and marriages. I'm sorry, I just realized that I said that it was a good thing that marriages were going down. No, I was trying to say it's a good thing that divorce is going down. It's a bad thing that divorce is not going up, that marriage is not going up. I'm sorry, I apologize for this confusion. But yeah, it's a sad thing that marriages are going down, and it's a sad thing that they were going up. And even now that we see that there's a decline of divorce, that is also a sign that people are not getting married as much as before, okay? So let's be careful with how we understand these statistics, because it's not as simple just to say, like, oh, divorce are slightly going down. Yes, but marriages are also going down. And why is that? On one hand, because cohabitation is going up, and on the other hand, is because loneliness is going up as well. Single adults is increasing as well. So now, what is the effect for this individual and for society of being married, divorced, single, or cohabitating? Well, let's talk about that. So single adults, and you can see here that there's a page number. This is because I took this information from my lifespan development textbook. I will provide to you the resource at the end in case that you want to buy that book. It's very good. I really like that book. Well, there's a rise in the percentage of single adults in the United States. 45% that are 18 and older are considered single adults now. This brings some challenges, such as the lack of intimate relationships, the loneliness, and finding a niche in society. Also, there are some positive elements, such as time for personal goals, autonomous decisions, exploration, and privacy. Now, what happens with these single adults? Well, 30% of regarding marriage, 40% of them, they don't know if they want to get married. 34% they do want to get married, and 27% they don't want to get married. So again, it's very interesting because this is a growing trend. I think that this has to do with the promotion that my generation was experiencing in social media. Well, no social media. We didn't have social media at the time, but in the media, mainstream media, with TV shows and movies. Remember that TV show Friends? They were pretty much advocating, they were pretty much doing apologetics of single adult life, right? Like telling us the single adult life is the best. You can have these friends all the time. You can enjoy. You can shift from one couple to other couple. You can have casual sex here, casual sex there. Commitment, it's not important. Don't worry. Nothing is going to happen. Well, we know that's not true. We know that it's not true because it does matter. We're going to talk about why relationships matter, but also it matters the sexual life that we are having, the promiscuity that we are having. So, for example, 50% of the US population has sexual transmitted disease. Every year, we have 20 million new cases of sexual transmitted disease, from which 50% of them are from teenagers, adolescents. Now, that's one thing. On the other hand, we have unwanted pregnancies, which I don't like that concept because I don't think that there's such a thing as unwanted pregnancy. I think that God wants every single pregnancy. He wants every single one of us. But maybe non-planned pregnancy, that would be a better word. And also the dramatic increase of abortion figures numbers in this country. All that is consequence of this message that we have been receiving, that it doesn't matter, you can do whatever you want, you can have sex with whomever you want, promiscuity is okay. It's not okay. And then we have a lot of research showing that those who engage in this non-committed relationship, non-committed sexual relationships, they have they increase the chances of developing mental health disorders. They increase the chances of committing suicide. So it's not only physical health consequences, it's also mental health consequences, because it's a very nihilistic lifestyle, right? Now, having said that, it's also true that it's becoming more and more difficult for people to find a couple. It's also true that it's becoming more and more difficult to find someone, right? Once that you are out of college, life becomes, what's the word that I'm looking here? I'm always having troubles with this word. Defragmentation, right? We are becoming less and less united. And once that you are out of college, it's more difficult to meet people. So I think that's why these dating apps have become so popular, because that's a way of meeting new people. Now, there are challenges with that too, but also benefits of these dating apps. Yeah, so 40% online dating and 24% meet through a friend. Now, research is saying that the online dating, there are challenges. There are many people faking their personality, their characteristics, and so on. And some creepy people going those online apps. Of course, you want to be careful. But also is showing that there are positive elements, because if you use them in an appropriate way, you can really know that person well enough before you commit with that person, before you move to the next stage or whatever you want to call it, right? So it can be also a good opportunity to know the person well. All right, now let's go to cohabitation. 14% of US between ages 25 and 34, and 10% between ages 18 and 24 were cohabitating. Now, most couples says, like, we're gonna live together before getting married to see if we are compatible or not, and to see if we can make the decision of a committed relationship or not. Now, is that working? Not really. In average, this relationship, they are 22 months long. Only 40% of cohabitators get married, 32% continue cohabitating, and 27% move out. So what does this mean? The idea that we're gonna go together to see if we can get married or not is not a good formula. If you cohabitate, you have less chances to get married. And not only that, in the first union, 70% of them did not have a high school diploma, and 47% with bachelor degree. Cohabitating individuals are not as mentally healthy as married, and lower rates of marital satisfaction and higher rates of divorce. So cohabitation is a formula for not getting married. It's a formula for developing psychological issues, marital insatisfaction, and to develop higher rates of divorce. It's not a good idea, what we have been promoting, right? Again, the media has been bombarding us for 20, 30 years, telling us this is the best model. It's not working, okay? Now, perhaps some of you are cohabitating right now, and you're saying, like, oh, it's working for me. Yeah, right? There's individual cases that do work. 32% continue cohabitating, right? And 40% they got married, but it's more challenging. Okay, it's more statistically speaking, it's not a good model if we want stable, long-term, satisfactory relationships. Now, what about married adults? In 2019, whoa, 548% now, it's 48%. I apologize for that. Let me see if I can fix that right now. Yeah, 48%, because I'm going to share this with you in a moment, and I don't want to share it wrongly, of adults married versus 72%. It's 48 or 58. I think it's 50. No, it's 48. 48. Yeah, I'm going to double check that too. Versus 72% in 1960. Average age, 29.5 years for men and 27.4 months for 0.4 years for 27 years and 4 months for women. However, 78% of US adults 25 years and older having been married. So these numbers are important to have in mind, because the rates of divorce that we're going to see in a moment. What are the benefits of a good marriage? Well, let's see some of them. Better financial picture. Why? Because most couples nowadays, both of them work and they bring their income. And if they are smart in the way that they use their money, they can make them work. In this country, even if you have a job that it's, I don't know how to, you guys use terms such as white collar, blue collar. I don't like those concepts, but if you too have a blue collar income, that can be a very good amount of money if you are smart on that. In my family, I am the only source of income here, because I'm the one with a visa job and so on. And we have been able to do well, even though the payment for professors are not as super exciting as many people think, but we have been able to do very well. When people ask me, how are you doing that? I said, like, well, the more that you want, the more that you spend, and the less that money is going to work for you. The less that you want, the less that you spend, and the more that the money is going to do for you. So I think that's one thing that works. Anyway, but if both of you are working, that could be a very good amount of money, right? Then long life. Why is that? Well, because when you are married, just think about the coronavirus. If you are married, it means that you're going to have someone that will care for you, someone who will bring food for you, someone who will bring the medicines for you, someone who will see that you are not dying and calling to the doctor or something like that, right? When you're alone, well, who's going to do all those things for you? And now I'm talking about the coronavirus, but that's true for many things. When I was single, I was very reckless in my behavior in many regards. I was doing a lot of extreme sports and things like that. But now that I'm married, I need to think about, if I do this and I have a bad accident, what's going to happen with my family, and so on, right? So I'm more conscious about the consequences of my behaviors. And my wife, she takes care appropriately for me, and I take care of her. And yeah, better mental health. How is that possible? Well, even though marriage is challenging, again, loneliness is poisonous. And we were created for community. We were created to be together. It's not good that man no es bueno que el hombre esté solo. It's not good that man is alone, as the Bible was telling us, right? So when we are together, we have to consider the other person. And when we are considering the other person, we're improving our mental health, because now it's not all about me, it's about us, right? Greater safety. There's actually statistics showing that divorced women, they are victims of violent crimes more often, and divorced or single men, they are victims of accidents more often, such as car accidents. And better sex. This is very interesting, because again, the media is telling us what you have to do is go and conquer as many as you can. But the reality is that sex, as many other behaviors, it takes time to perfection the behavior. And the more that you do it, the better you become. And that's true about the person. the more that you have sex with one particular person, the better you become having sex with that person, because now you understand what that person likes, what that person doesn't like, what is good for that person, what is not good for that person, what is good for you with that person, what is not good for you with that person. So when people are having casual sex, they don't know each other. And because sex is not just about mechanics, it's also about emotional and spiritual connection, which takes time, right? So when you have a person that it's committed to you, a person that lives with you, a person who shares the bed with you, well, first you have more access to sex. There's no rocket science there. But two, you have this intimate experience, which is emotional, psychological, and spiritual, sharing sex with that person. So there's this book that it's called The Case for Marriage. They bring all the research together in case that you want to know more. And I'm leaving this link. It's like a summary of that book. If you want to read the whole book, you can read that link, okay? All right. Now, with that said, we need to question, then why is that the media is pushing in a different direction? Why is telling us that the best lifestyle is single, promiscuous, cohabitating, when it is not? Well, that's something that we all need to reflect, and we all need to ask, how much am I trusting in the media? How much I'm trusting in the things that I'm watching, and how often I'm watching that? Because even when you don't trust, if you are consuming that, sooner or later you're going to be in agreement with that. I'm just wondering, like, how our society will look like if we wouldn't have all the technology that we have nowadays. Well, we know, you can look at the 50s, right? Or 60s, no, 50s, I would say. Now, doesn't mean that they were perfect, doesn't mean that it was a perfect time in human history. There was a lot of troubles as well. But many of the things that we are seeing now, especially regarding this marital crisis that we are having as a society, it was not present at the time. For sure, there was some satisfaction, but I don't know if more or less. I would say less, because there's another element. This whole idea of identity that we talk so much nowadays, right? If I am Mexican, American, white, black, or whatever, it's a modern concept. I was listening to a professor of theology of Oxford. A student came to him and said, like, I would like to write my thesis, my PhD thesis, on the concept of identity and Augustine. and the professor started laughing. You what? Yeah, identity and the theology and philosophy of St. Augustine. And he said, like, well, you write nothing, because the whole idea of questioning your identity in the past didn't make any sense. The whole idea was, I am a Christian. That was the only source of identity, right? I am a Christian. I am a children of God. So St. Augustine and all the fathers of the church, and all the great Christian thinkers, they were thinking about, are you either Christian or not? Are you either consider yourself a children of God or not? Right? Now we have made things more complicated. And because, again, we are making things more complicated, we are having this defragmentation of our society, and our unity looks more and more complicated for us. I was reading your comments about what I said about the cancel culture, right? And all of you were like, yeah, cancel culture is not okay. But then why is that we having it? Because this defragmentation, this lack of unity, this idea that there are some that are good, others that are bad. And of course, those who are good are those who think like me, right? Well, it doesn't work like that. One of you said something beautiful about I have a very important job to do, and that is my own conversion. I need to work with myself instead of going out and telling people, you are wrong, you are wrong, you are wrong. But we are becoming to this point of defragmentation, lack of unity, because we are losing a common ground. And that common ground was, for the last 2,000 years, it was, are you either Christian or not? Are you consider yourself children of God or not? Now you may say, well, but what about Jews and Muslim and other religions? Yes. In Europe, there was coexistence, especially with Jews. And then there was moments with Muslim, a lot of tension. You can read the story of Spain, the history of Spain, right? Which was conquered by the Muslim empire. And yes, that was a source of division and suffering and so on. But again, the Muslims at the time, they also had the same idea. Are you either considered Muslim or not? So identity was based on religious beliefs, religious association, more than anything else. Now, what happened with divorced adults? Well, divorced adults has become an epidemic. That's how they call it, this Braver and Lamb in their research, 2013. And why are they using that concept? Because it's painful. It's really, really painful. And I have worked with couples. I have helped couples to get divorced because sometimes it seems that there's no option, right? And even Jesus said that to us, that when they go and ask, like, Moses tell us that we could divorce our wives. What do you think about that? And he answered, right, that the only reason of why divorce will be, he says something like, he said that to you because your la dureza de tu corazón, the hardness of your heart, or something like that, right? But remember that God created man and women, just the passage that I read to you. And he says the only reason of why someone could divorce another person is adultery. Now, that's a huge concept, right? But I would say pretty much all Christians will agree that adultery and violence are two good reasons, two valid reasons to separate or even to divorce your couple. But it's very interesting. Research is showing that those are the least of the reasons of why people are getting divorced. Most people are getting divorced because we grew apart. That's how they say, that's how they call it, which is very interesting. What's going on here? Well, maybe what we have been talking about, this culture of individuality, and it's everything about me and what I want to achieve in life and to complete my dreams in life. It's not compatible with the idea of living together, having a couple, right? 2.2 divorce per 1,000 people. Divorced people are in higher risk of, there's a higher risk of getting divorced. Those who married very young, who have low educational levels, low income, no religion, divorced parents, and they had a baby before marriage. Reasons for why people divorce grew apart, as I was telling you, is the highest, 39%. Adultery, 18% for men and 34% for women. Arguments, 27% for men and 30% for women. Lack of respect, 17% for men, 25% for women. And violence, 4% and 16%. So as you can see, adultery and violence, they don't make the first reason of divorce, but grew apart. What does that mean? It can be very different from one couple than other. And the question is, why? Why you let that happen? It's because you didn't ask the right questions before getting married. It's because you didn't go deep. You didn't fall in a deep sleep to try to know each other. Or is because you were not able to move from the I to the us, from the me to the us, from the self to the selves, or the integrated self. I don't know how to say that. Why? Usually in the 5th or 10th year of marriage, So we see a huge decline after year number 5 and then number 10 again. But after that, marriages become very stable. There's a high risk for partner with alcoholism, psychological problems, domestic violence, infidelity, inadequate division, household labors. So many couples are like, oh, I thought that once that we get married, he will change or she will change. No, that doesn't work like that. What you see in when you are dating, it's going to remain when you are married. Of course, there's change. Change is always possible, but it's important to be aware of those things because many of those things are characterological things, lifelong. Divorced men and women more likely to commit suicide, heart attack, loneliness, diminished self-esteem, anxiety, and difficulty with intimate relationships. So these are the graphics that I was telling you about the rate in relation to number of years married. And again, number 5 and 10 are important years for divorce. But after year number 10, it goes down. Now, what happened with remarried adults, as I said to you, it's interesting because many people think, well, he or she was already divorced. Now in their second or third marriage, they're going to do better. They learn. It seems that doesn't work like that. For those in second marriages, divorce is as high as 60%, and in third marriages, 65%. Remember that for the first marriages, it's 50%, so it's higher. Men are more likely to remarry, and that's related to the thing that men are more likely to find younger couples than women. So women, they have a lack of options, for say it in some way. Remarriage, of course, sooner for partners who initiate a divorce, more unstable than first marriages, and higher rates of depression, but improve financial status. So with that said, what can we make? Well, first, about divorce, not all divorce ended up terrible. We know that divorce also has difficult consequences for children. The first 2 years are especially difficult for the children. But sometimes, well, sometimes things are so difficult that it seems that there's no other option. Sometimes there is options. And sometimes people who divorce, they don't end up having all the negative consequences that we saw. As I said to you, one of my sisters, she's divorced. She's doing very well. My wife, she comes from a divorced family and she's doing very well in many respects. So these are statistical elements, information, not individual information, okay? So what can we do to make marriages work? Well, John Gottman is an expert in couples therapy and so on, very famous psychologist. He says there are 7 things that you can do. First, establishing love maps. That is, how you feel love, how do I feel love? Nurturing fondness and admiration. So I think that admiration is a very important element in relationships, in couples relationships. Once that admiration is gone, the relationship is going to go down, turning toward each other instead of away. I would say many couples, when I work with them, I ask them, when did you start behaving as enemies instead of as couples, right? And when they have problems, they have like this, I'm not going to talk to you, you should know better. And it doesn't work like that. You need to work your problems. You need to talk your problems. You need to see the other as a person that you really care, and not as a person who has to care about you. I mean, it's both ways, right? You need to put the other first. Letting your partner influence you, solving solvable conflicts. It's amazing to see how many of the conflicts are due to things that are not really important. Overcoming gridlock. That stagnation, that those walls that we put, emotional, verbal walls, and creating shared meaning. So when you have goals in life together, dreams together, meaning, purpose, it's easier to find. Couples that they do activities together, that they have these goals in life together, they do better. All right. Now, let's talk about why relationships are so important for us. In previous classes, we have talked about God as a community of three, right? The relationship between the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Today, I want to talk to you from a different perspective, a complementary perspective. And to do that, we are going to watch a video, okay? This is a video, it's a TED Talk, a very interesting video of a longitudinal study that has been done in Harvard for 75 years now. It's one of the longest studies in psychology. And we're going to watch them together, okay? And then we're going to talk about what we learned from this video and why relationships are so important. I hope that you like this video. I really like the video, so I hope that you like it too. I'm going to stop my video because I want you to concentrate in the video that I'm going to share with you, not in what I'm doing. So give me a second here.
Become a cybersecurity professional in less than a year. Our live virtual classes take place.
All right. So we're going to start the TED Talk video, and I'm going to mute myself. I don't know if I should mute myself. Maybe it's not a good idea because maybe you are not going to listen to the video. I don't know. So I'm just going to stop my video so you can pay attention to the TED Talk, okay? And then we're going to talk about what can we learn from this.
What keeps us healthy and happy as we go through life? If you were going to invest now in your future best self, where would you put your time and your energy? There was a recent survey of millennials asking them what their most important life goals were. And over 80% said that a major life goal for them was to get rich. And another 50% of those same young adults said that another major life goal was to become famous. And we're constantly told to lean into work, to push harder and achieve more. We're given the impression that these are the things that we need to go after in order to have a good life. Pictures of entire lives, of the choices that people make and how those choices work out for them, those pictures are almost impossible to get. Most of what we know about human life, we know from asking people to remember the past. And as we know, hindsight is anything but 20/20. We forget vast amounts of what happens to us in life, and sometimes memory is downright creative. But what if we could watch entire lives as they unfold through time? What if we could study people from the time that they were teenagers all the way into old age to see what really keeps people happy and healthy? We did that. The Harvard study of adult development may be the longest study of adult life that's ever been done. For 75 years, we've tracked the lives of 724 men. Year after year, asking about their work, their home lives, their health, and of course, asking all along the way without knowing how their life stories were going to turn out. Studies like this are exceedingly rare. Almost all projects of this kind fall apart within a decade because too many people drop out of the study, or funding for the research dries up, or the researchers get distracted, or they die, and nobody moves the ball further down the field. But through a combination of luck and the persistence of several generations of researchers, this study has survived. About 60 of our original 724 men are still alive, still participating in the study, most of them in their 90s. And we are now beginning to study the more than 2,000 children of these men. And I'm the fourth director of the study. Since 1938, we've tracked the lives of two groups of men. The first group started in the study when they were sophomores at Harvard College. They all finished college during World War II, and then most went off to serve in the war. And the second group that we've followed was a group of boys from Boston's poorest neighborhoods. Boys who were chosen for the study specifically because they were from some of the most troubled and disadvantaged families in the Boston of the 1930s. Most lived in tenements, many without hot and cold running water. When they entered the study, all of these teenagers were interviewed, they were given medical exams. We went to their homes and we interviewed their parents. And then these teenagers grew up into adults who entered all walks of life. They became factory workers and lawyers and bricklayers and doctors, one president of the United States. Some developed alcoholism, a few developed schizophrenia. Some climbed the social ladder from the bottom all the way to the very top, and some made that journey in the opposite direction. The founders of this study would never in their wildest dreams have imagined that I would be standing here today, 75 years later, telling you that the study still continues. Every 2 years, our patient and dedicated research staff calls up our men and asks them if we can send them yet one more set of questions about their lives. Many of the inner city Boston men ask us, "Why do you keep wanting to study me? My life just isn't that interesting." The Harvard men never asked that question. To get the clearest picture of these lives, we don't just send them questionnaires. We interview them in their living rooms. We get their medical records from their doctors. We draw their blood. We scan their brains. We talk to their children. We videotape them talking with their wives about their deepest concerns. And when about a decade ago we finally asked the wives if they would join us as members of the study, many of the women said, "You know, it's about time." So what have we learned? What are the lessons that come from the tens of thousands of pages of information that we've generated on these lives? Well, the lessons aren't about wealth or fame or working harder and harder. The clearest message that we get from this 75-year study is this: good relationships keep us happier and healthier, period. We've learned 3 big lessons about relationships. The first is that social connections are really good for us and that loneliness kills. It turns out that people who are more socially connected to family, to friends, to community are happier, they're physically healthier, and they live longer than people who are less well connected. And the experience of loneliness turns out to be toxic. People who are more isolated than they want to be from others find that they are less happy, their health declines earlier in midlife, their brain functioning declines sooner, and they live shorter lives than people who are not lonely. And the sad fact is that at any given time, more than 1 in 5 Americans will report that they're lonely. And we know that you can be lonely in a crowd and you can be lonely in a marriage. So the second big lesson that we learned is that it's not just the number of friends you have, and it's not whether or not you're in a committed relationship, but it's the quality of your close relationships that matters. It turns out that living in the midst of conflict is really bad for our health. High conflict marriages, for example, without much affection, turn out to be very bad for our health, perhaps worse than getting divorced. And living in the midst of good, warm relationships is protective. Once we had followed our men all the way into their 80s, we wanted to look back at them at midlife and to see if we could predict who was going to grow into a happy, healthy octogenarian and who wasn't. And when we gathered together everything we knew about them at age 50, it wasn't their middle-aged cholesterol levels that predicted how they were going to grow old. It was how satisfied they were in their relationships. The people who were the most satisfied in their relationships at age 50 were the healthiest at age 80. And good, close relationships seem to buffer us from some of the slings and arrows of getting old. Our most happily partnered men and women reported in their 80s that on the days when they had more physical pain, their moods stayed just as happy. But the people who were in unhappy relationships, on the days when they reported more physical pain, it was magnified by more emotional pain. And the third big lesson that we learn about relationships and our health is that good relationships don't just protect our bodies, they protect our brains. It turns out that being in a securely attached relationship to another person in your 80s is protective, that the people who are in relationships where they really feel they can count on the other person in times of need, those people's memories stay sharper longer. And the people in relationships where they feel they really can't count on the other one, those are the people who experience earlier memory decline. And those good relationships, they don't have to be smooth all the time. Some of our octogenarian couples could bicker with each other day in and day out. But as long as they felt that they could really count on the other when the going got tough, those arguments didn't take a toll on their memories. So, this message that good, close relationships are good for our health and well-being, this is wisdom that's as old as the hills. Why is this so hard to get and so easy to ignore? Well, we're human. What we'd really like is a quick fix, something we can get that'll make our lives good and keep them that way. Relationships are messy and they're complicated, and the hard work of tending to family and friends, that's not sexy or glamorous. It's also lifelong. It never ends. The people in our 75-year study who were the happiest in retirement were the people who had actively worked to replace workmates with new playmates. Just like the millennials in that recent survey, many of our men, when they were starting out as young adults, really believed that fame and wealth and high achievement were what they needed to go after to have a good life. But over and over these 75 years, our study has shown that the people who fared the best were the people who leaned into relationships with family, with friends, with community. So what about you? Let's say you're 25, or you're 40, or you're 60. What might leaning into relationships even look like? Well, the possibilities are practically endless. It might be something as simple as replacing screen time with people time, or livening up a stale relationship by doing something new together, long walks or date nights, or reaching out to that family member who you haven't spoken to in years, because those all too common family feuds take a terrible toll on the people who hold the grudges. I'd like to close with a quote from Mark Twain. More than a century ago, he was looking back on his life, and he wrote this: "There isn't time, so brief is life, for bickerings, apologies, heartburnings, callings to account. There is only time for loving, and but an instant, so to speak, for that. The good life is built with good relationships." Thank you.
All right, let me share my video again with you. What do you think about this presentation? What do you think about what he's saying? Do you like it or not? Let's see some of the benefits, but I would love to, or I will encourage you to share with me your thoughts about this video, about this lecture or this TED talk that he's telling us about this important research that has been done. Well, he says 75 years, but this TED talk is, I think it's from 2015 or 12. It may be around 85 years now of research, ongoing research. It's one of the longest for sure. All right, so some of the findings: good relationships keeps us smart. Very interesting, because one of the things that we see is that those who age alone, they even have more chances to develop cognitive problems such as dementias and things like that. So it's good for cognitive health. Then good relationships keeps us healthier. As we have been talking with marriage, keep us healthier. Well, good relationships in general keep us healthier. So it's important, even if you don't have a couple, it's important that you cultivate relationships in your life. So it's interesting to see how much time we spend in work, in doing things to try to impression others. And sometimes how little time we spend with those who care about us, with those who love us. Good relationships makes us live longer. Loneliness kills and makes people less happy, and loneliness is correlated with health and brain functioning decline. So how are you doing with those areas? How are you doing with your relationships? Are you investing time on them? Are you investing, yes, time and resources on them? Do you see your relationships as the most important thing in your life? Starting with the relationship of God, for sure. And if so, how much time are you investing on that in your daily life? And I know it's difficult. For me, God and my family, they are the most important things. And sometimes I spend so much time here in the university, in my work and so on. But how are you doing? Because when we say that, well, I don't give them time, but I give them quality, right? It doesn't work like that. It's not just about quality time, it's about the amount of time too. Yeah, all right, so I'm gonna leave it like that. We already talked about singles, cohabitating, divorce, marriage, remarriage, and divorce. And now we talk about relationships matters. Why are they so important? We need to move to the final topic of this presentation, which is parenting and parenting styles, okay? And I choose this picture for one reason. There's a documentary that I want to suggest you to watch. It's called The Father Effect. It's a powerful documentary. You're going to find this documentary on YouTube for free. The director, he just uploaded for free. It's 1 hour long. I really like it because for many years, we had the idea in our society that mom was in charge of the education and dad was in charge of providing. Now, we have moved from that idea. And what we see is that now mom provides, dad provides, and sometimes neither mom or dad educate, provide a parenting, okay? And not only that, we even hear a message. This is both in our society and also in the academia, saying that dads are not important. There was a couple of papers published in famous, in important journals, with the hypothesis that dads were not important for the development of the children. Those papers, they have their roots in Marxist philosophy, which Marx, he associated the dad with oppression. So all the concepts that you are listening nowadays about patriarchy and all these all these ideas around patriarchy and so on, they come from the Marxist philosophy. And he saw the father figure as an oppressive figure and a figure that was in competition with the state. So for Marx, it was important to get rid of it because for Marx, the only authority should be the state, not God the Father, not the mom, not the father, not the family, but just the state, right? And we have seen that philosophy, well, I would say, and even the roots of going against the father figure, we find that in the Adam and Eve account of rebelling, challenging the father's authority with the limitation of eating of that particular fruit, right? And they decide to go against with a promise from the snake, you will be like gods. So all this idea, it's a very ancient idea that the father is either bad, not necessary, or incapable. We see all these ideas also expressed in the media. If you think about Disney movies, much of those movies, many of those movies, the father figure doesn't exist. And when it does exist, it's a negative representation of the father, either as a tyrant, as someone mean, or for example, you have Star Wars, right? Where Darth Vader is the father, right? Look, I am your father, the bad guy. Or then you have The Simpsons, for example, where dad is good for nothing. Homer, he's a horrible father, horrible man, that he's just engaged in what's the word that I'm looking, just self-gratification, right? Or you see, for example, everybody loves Raymond, right? He was not a father. He was not even a husband. He was another child. So what I'm telling you here is that we have a society with 50% of divorce rates, where an enormous amount of children are growing up without the father figure. Then you have the media telling you that is either unnecessary, or it's a negative influence for their children, or it's just a child in the body of a grown man person. And then you have even the academia telling you that dads are oppressive, negatives, and so on. And you have also the snake telling you you don't need to care about the father. But as a Christian, Jesus called his father, right? He called God his father. He didn't call God as his friend. He didn't call God as any other, but as his father. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. So he's telling us the father is important. That's why Christians, we come from not a patriarchy, as they say nowadays, but a patriarchal heritage, where the father figure was really important in the idea of bringing cohesion, bringing protection, and helping to not only to maintain the family, but to maintain the society. And we have the statistics telling us when the father is not involved in the education of their children, when there's an absence of the father, or when the father doesn't relate with respect and love and authority to his children, and if he doesn't respect and love the mother of his children, that's going to bring a lot of negative consequences. It's what we call the father wound. And that father wound, which is provoked by the absence of the father figure or by a negative relationship with the father, it's associated, correlated with mental health problems, physical problems, with low academical achievement, with low income or not success in the workplace, with divorce, with promiscuity, with drug abuse, with violence. There's a lot of research showing that. And we are not talking about that as a society. We are not talking about the importance of bringing the father back in the center of the family life, along with the mother, not above, not below, but along with the mother. Because children need, for their healthy psychological development, the presence of the father and the presence of the mother. It's like the two legs that they need. Now, does that mean that every children who grow up without a father figure is going to end up negatively as the statistics that I was telling you? No, that's not true. Again, my wife comes with an absent father and so on, and she's an amazing person. But statistically speaking, it's more likely that it's going to happen. And you just had a picture of divorce in our society, and you can think about how many of the social and political problems that we are having nowadays are correlated with the changes in the family, the absence, the rupture in marriages, and the absence of the father figure. So, for example, in the Black communities, it's up to 70% of Black families that they grow up without the father figure. And that is a disaster. And we're not talking enough about that. Well, Barack Obama, he talked about that once, but we are not seeing public policies trying to reinforce, to promote the cohesion of the families and the presence of the father in the children development. So anyway, if you want to know more about the fate of the fatherless, the psychology of atheism, this is Paul Vitz, is a Christian psychologist. He wrote this book, and he's saying why so many of the intellectuals of 20th century and 21st century, they are atheists, they are against the idea of God, and they are so vocal against the father figure. And that's especially true for philosophy, psychology, and sociology, okay? And he found that every single of these main figures, these very important figures in these fields, they come from a family with an absent father or with a emotional absent father with their children. And he says, atheism, as we understand nowadays, has a relationship with that experience with the biological father. If you had a negative relationship with your biological father, who's an imperfect father, who's a broken human being, right? But it's your biological father, then it's going to be more difficult for you to connect positively with your heavenly father, which is an archetype. Not only it's a reality, but it's also an archetype, a psychological archetype of what father means, right? And because you have this father conflict, it's more likely that you're going to have a heavenly father conflict as well. Anyway, very interesting. I suggest you to read it. So, but let's move to the parenting. Now that we have talked about mom and dad are very important for the children development, and that father needs to be involved, not only bringing money, he needs to be involved in daily activities, because one of the things that I say to the fathers that they consult me is, for your children, their life is going to school, doing homeworks, going to their sports, playing, taking a shower, changing, having dinner, having breakfast. If you are not part of it, if you are not part of that, you are not part of their lives, period. You can be working 14 hours a day, but if you are not in those activities, you are not part of their life. And if you are not part of their life, you cannot expect to have a close relationship with them. Okay, so now let's move about that topic. Now, so does punishment work? When we are parenting our children, does punishment work? It doesn't work. So discipline heavy in threats and punishment does not produce lasting change in behavior. It produces change in the moment, but not in the long term. And when the parenting is harsh, causes many negative side effects. So what are alternatives to that? For that is timeout, withdrawal of privileges, teaching our kids that they have that there are a correlation between what they do and what they experience in life, cause and effect, right? I always say to the parents, you need to have two elements in your parenting with your children. On one hand, rules. Your children need to know that there are standards, that there are rules in their lives, and that if they follow those rules, those standards, they're going to have positive consequences. But if they break those rules, those standards, they're going to have negative consequences. Why? Because that's life, right? That's life. If you go to work, you have your payment. You don't go to work, you don't have your payment. If you treat well others will treat you better, or at least there are more chances for that. But if you treat them bad, there are more chances that they're going to treat you bad, and so on, right? But the other element is love, is affection, is showing affection to your kids, telling them that you love them. Remember what were the words that Jesus received when he was baptized? This is my son, whom I love and whom I rejoice. Those words are very important for all the kids to hear from their father and their mother, right? Then effective mild punishment involves consistency, warm parent-child relationship, explanation. So punishment, but not physical punishment, but withdrawal of privileges, it's a good way of helping our children to understand the consequences of their acts, okay? Now, unfortunately, physical punishment is still very prevalent in many families. So you can see here, prevalence of corporal punishment in early and middle childhood by year of survey. And you can see 2002 is the more recent, is the orange, purple 1995, yellow 85, red 75. And you can see there's a decline after the age of 5, right? But even though the year number 5 it's very high, and I would say, yeah, we discourage the idea of physical punishment because there are many messages that we are sending to our kids when we use corporal punishment to them. We are telling them the people who love you can harm you, can be physical with you. Then we are also telling them when someone is upset with you, has the right to hurt you physically. Those are not messages that you want your children to grow up with, right? Because then that may allow them in future relationships to accept mistreatment. What are these child maltreatment that we see more often? 80% of children that die from abuse are under the age of 4, which is very interesting because self-control is one of the most important things that we can teach our children, but real self-control is something that children will acquire around the age of 9. So the first 5 years especially, it's a very important for them to, it's a stage of trial and error, and we need to teach them how to do it, but many parents, they get desperate. So physical abuse, it's assault that inflicts physical injury, sexual abuse, fondling, intercourse, pornography, and other forms. Yes, pornography is a way of sexual abuse. neglect, failing to meet children's basic needs, and emotional abuse, social isolation, unreasonable demands, humiliation, intimidation, and other forms. So we need to be careful that children can be protected of these forms of abuse, okay? So now, who's the perpetrator? We have this tendency in our society telling us that is the bad guy, right? The movies and cartoons and so on. But the reality is different. Look, you can read this article here in childhelp.org, and they present these statistics. They said that the child maltreatment perpetrator by relationship with the victim, the highest comes from the mother, 41%. Is the double than the father, all right? And the rest, the other 40%, so 41 is the mother, 21 is the father, and the rest is from different people connected with the children. Now, why am I bringing this with you? Why am I sharing this with you? For many reasons. Number one, it's very easy to see the dad as the bad guy and then to jump to the conclusions when we see a children who has been mistreated that it's the dad's fault, right? And unfortunately, even the judicial system is very biased on this. And it's unlikely that fathers will get the custody, for example. It's more likely that when there's a divorce, the custody will go for the mother than for the father. And child services, they will more likely to see when a kid is, again, having abuse, to think that it's the father. There's this stereotype in our society telling us that. And that's unfortunate for many reasons. Number one, because the children will not receive the care, the protection that he needs. Number two, because it can be an injustice for many fathers. But number three, because the mother, if she's the one perpetrating, is not receiving the appropriate help. This narrative that the dad is the bad guy and that the mom is always the good guy is not helping anyone. Those moms that are perpetrating this type of mistreatment or maltreatment to their children, they need help. And if we don't talk about these realities, if we don't talk about these situations, they will not receive that. Now, why is that the mother is more often the perpetrator? Well, perhaps because the mom is the one who spends more time with the father. It's not that the mothers are horrible in comparison with the fathers. We don't want to go to the narrative that the dad is the bad guy now to say that the bad guy is the mom. It's just evident that they spend more time with their kids. And the more time that you spend with a kid, more chances of having conflicts with those kids, right? But on the other hand, women are struggling with a message that our society is sending them. You need to be a perfect worker, like a perfect professional, to be successful in your job, to earn money. And then you need to be perfect as a woman. You need to look awesome. You need to be perfect as a mother, perfect as a wife. And I'm like, come on. No, you just need to be yourself. And it's very difficult that you can be good in all these areas, right? And that's true for men and women. And if children are the most important, well, if relationships are the most important thing, we need to rethink how much time are we dedicating them and what's the effect of all the other activities that we are doing in our relationship with them. So, yeah. So now, Bauerins, she found that there are 4 different parenting styles. First one is authoritative, which is the one that we try to promote in psychology. These are parents that they have rules and they have affection with their kids. They are high in acceptance of their kids, high involved with their kids. They have an adaptive control depending in the context, the situation, and they allow that there's an autonomy appropriate because they still see themselves as the authority in the family. That's a good model. We're going to see the outcomes in a moment. Then there's the authoritarian. The authoritarian is a tyrant at home. We don't promote that, okay? There's a lot of physical punishment, there's a lot of rules, there's no negotiation, there's no affection, and there's low acceptance of their children, low involvement in their lives of the children, high coercive control, and low autonomy. They are over-controlling. Indulgent, unfortunately, we see this very often. Parents that they think that my job is to be your friend. No, your job is to be her or his parent. They're only going to have one dad and one mom. Don't deprive them of that experience. Now, you can be friendly with them for sure, and we want you to be friendly, but you are not the friend, you are the mother, you are the father, right? Or parents that they are like, I'm going to do everything for you, so don't worry, you have to do nothing. And they raise narcissist children. High in acceptance. Oh, my baby is the most beautiful of all the babies, my princess, my prince. Involvement too low or too high. You can do whatever you want, or don't worry, sweetie, I'm gonna do it for you. Control low. You are in charge, not me, right? And autonomy very high. They let the children to do whatever they want. And finally, neglectful. These are parents that are neither present physically, covering the material things of the children, neither emotionally. Low in acceptance, low in involvement, low in control. They are indifferent in the autonomy of their children. So what are the outcomes? Authoritative, the one that we promote, is there's more self-control, better social and moral maturity, and high self-esteem, and better relationships, more stable jobs, better academic achievements, and so on. Authoritarian doesn't work. A lot of anxiety, unhappiness, low self-esteem, anger, and defiance. There's more chances to become adults with depression. Indulgent, impulsivity, disobedience, poor school achievement, and neglectful, depression, poor emotional regulation, school achievement, difficulties, antisocial behavior. And I see this very often in my practice. They become people with a lot of relationship problems. All right, so that's all about this presentation. I just want to remind you about the assignment number 7 and the last assignment, which is across the 8 weeks of the course. Read the book Man's Search for Meaning and submit a 4-page long paper with your reflections on its content. Try to answer the following questions. What was my experience while reading the content of the pages? What were the most impactful events shared in the book? After I have finished reading it, what are my thoughts on purpose and meaning in life? Have I learned anything about how to cope with difficulties in life? And remember, the due date is 12/13/21. I think that's wrong. Let me just verify that, because I think that the 13, guys, which is next Monday, is not Wednesday. Okay, so just for you to have that in mind. And well, I think this was longer than what I was expecting. I hope that you like it. I hope that the topics that we cover here are interesting for you. And I will see you next week. And bye-bye. Have a great week.